I think everybody thinks of ancient Egypt as being ancient. What people tend to forget is how long it lasted. It's a culture that lasted for 4,000 years. It's the longest continually documented language in world history. It's one of the longest single cultures and religions we have. So it poses a lot of very interesting questions about how things change, how mankind's cultures evolve. The Griffith Institute was founded 75 years ago, and it's named after the first professor of Egyptology, Francis Llewellyn Griffith. He worked both on texts and as an archaeologist, and had a very rounded vision of what ancient Egypt was about. And he set up a library, teaching spaces, and also research projects that were trying to gather together a bibliography of everything published about ancient Egypt. So it could be a centre for Egyptology across the world. And so it's been called the Scotland Yard of Egyptology. It's where people would bring questions, and hopefully from the archives, from the reference works, we could supply answers. Of course, in a digital age, we hope to expand and really make it much more accessible across the world. We're next door to the Ashmolean collections. We have one of the world's great libraries here. We have one of the world's great Egyptological archives. We've also got a range of researchers on a very wide set of topics, and a set of students, of course. So we really have everything we need to try and get to grips with Egyptology in the modern age.
We have this huge legacy of these projects that were established in the last century that were seen then to be conservation projects. That, you know, when Griffith first imagined the Griffith Institute, his vision was a conservation one. He was already thinking then that these objects were in danger. And so we're part of that, you know, we inherit that, and we inherit that responsibility and that duty of care. I think teaching is about conservation. It's about communicating and ensuring that the heritage of ancient Egypt is preserved. You're very aware when you're working in Egypt, when you're working on site, when you're up against a wall, that these objects or these monuments are fragile. I mean, they may seem overwhelmingly kind of massive, and we know they've been standing for thousands of years, but there is a real fragility to them.
We're at a point where we can enter a whole new phase to really reinvent Griffith's vision of making all these resources about an ancient culture fully accessible across the world with digital means. Griffith's endowments haven't survived quite as well as his reputation, and we really need to find ways of making sure these ongoing projects can be fully financially sustainable. So the resources are not just available here in Oxford, they're available across the world, and they're kept continually up to date. I think something like Egyptology is funded for the same reason you fund Shakespeare or Michelangelo. It's part of humanity's history. It's a very important, very wonderful part of humanity's history, and we cannot afford to let it go.